第6章魏晋门阀政治，东晋王与马共天下与田余庆隐性契约。Chapter 6 The Politics of Aristocratic Clans in the Wei-Jin Period. Eastern Jins, the Wang and the Mao rule together, and Tianyu Qing's implicit covenant. 第1节从曹魏禅带到西晋乱局，制度约束的松弛。Section E From the Wei succession to the Western Jin chaos. The erosion of institutional restraints. By the late Eastern Han, imperial authority declined, eunuchs and imperial relatives seized power, and warlords fought incessantly. The checks and balances established in the Qin and Han, including chancellery power, public deliberation, and customary institutions collapsed comprehensively. Both the transition from Han to Wei and from Wei to Western Jin followed the pattern of usurpation by powerful ministers. Regime legitimacy rested on military force and political maneuver, not on institutions, public discourse, or tradition. Imperial, chancellery, and military power fell into severe imbalance, with extremely weak institutional constraints, laying deep roots for the subsequent rebellion of the Eight Princes, the uprising of the Five Barbarians, and the North-South Division. Both successions relied on military coercion by powerful ministers, violating institutional succession and established conventions, leading to persistent political instability. Tang Chengru, Essays on the History of the Wei, Jin, Northern and Southern Dynasties, 1950. B. 36. The Western Jin suffered chaotic succession systems, overmighty imperial princes, hollowed-out chancellery power, and decentralized military authority. Multiple institutional flaws combined to trigger internal disorder, marking the complete collapse of the Qin-Han institutional restraint system. 田余庆，东晋门阀政治，1989年，第17页。第2节东晋门阀共治，王与马共天下的政治现实。Section R Shared rule of aristocratic clans in the Eastern Jin, the political reality of the Wang and the Mao rule together. After the fall of the Western Jin, the Sima imperial clan fled south and established the Eastern Jin regime. Imperial authority was extremely weak, military forces feeble, and legitimacy insufficient. The court had to rely on the combined support of northern aristocratic clans that had migrated, south and local southern clans, forming the most typical pattern of shared rule between aristocratic clans and imperial power in Chinese history. Its iconic slogan, passed down through the ages, was, "The Wang and the Ma ruled together, the Langyao Wang clan and the Sima imperial house jointly governed the realm, shared power, and administered the state." Imperial power was no longer dominant, nor were aristocratic clans mere subordinates. A relationship of equality, checks and balances, symbiosis, and mutual dependence emerged between ruler and ministers. Throughout the Eastern Jin, 4 great clans, the Langyao Wang, Yingchuan Yu, Qiao Guohuan, and Chen Junjie took turns in power, alternating control and checking one another. A long-term geographic, military, and political balance existed between the central regime in Jiangkang and the upper reach military stronghold of Jingzhou. Most emperors were figureheads, with real power held by aristocratic clans, creating a distinctive political form of aristocratic shared rule, decentralized power, limited monarchy, and customary supremacy. Eastern Jin aristocratic politics centered on clan-based shared rule, with imperial power reduced to a symbolic position. Power distribution followed clan strength and convention, representing the apex of aristocratic politics in ancient China. Tianyu Qing, the politics of the Eastern Jin aristocratic clans, 1989, p. 32. The rotation of clans and balance between upper and lower reaches formed a power order that operated stably without a written constitution. Tang Chengru, continued essays on the history of the Wei, Jing, Northern, and Southern Dynasties. 1959 p. 47. 第3节田余庆东晋门阀政治，吴承文宪法下的隐性契约秩序。Section 3 Tianyu Qing's The Politics of the Eastern Jin Aristocratic Clans, the order of implicit covenant without a written constitution. Regarding this distinctive political form of the Eastern Jin, Tianyu Qing, the leading authority on Wei Jin northern southern history, proposed a concept of profound constitutional significance in his classic work. The Implicit Covenant. Tian clearly states that the Eastern Jin possessed no written constitution, no aristocratic compact comparable to the Magna Carta, no legal division of powers, and no judicial enforcement mechanism. Yet among the emperor, aristocratic clans, regional military governors, and refugee armies, there long existed a set of unspoken, mutually observed, stable, and effective implicit covenants, customary orders, and power understandings that could not be easily breached. ITS core rules included: first, the emperor could not rule arbitrarily and had to respect the power, interests, and political status of aristocratic clans. Second, aristocratic clans took turns iron governance and checked one another, and none could easily usurp the throne or break the orthodox legitimacy of the Sima house. Third, the central government in Jiankang, administrative center, and the upper reach Jingzhou, military center, maintained a balance of power, with neither side allowed to dominate or annex the other. Fourth, all forces jointly upheld the orthodox banner of the Jin dynasty to preserve order and protect their respective interests. Fifth, power distribution rested on strength, lineage, custom, and consensus, not the personal will of the ruler. Tian emphasizes that this implicit covenant without written text but with real binding force, clear power boundaries, and checks and balances functionally approximated Western feudal compacts, constitutional conventions, and power-restraining orders. It represents the most typical and mature case of ancient China's flexible constitutionalism without rigid constitution, and customary restraints without written rules, and an extremely special and important link in China's tradition of limited government, Tian Yuqing. The politics of the Eastern Jin aristocratic clans, 1989, p. 56. Sustained by balance of power and consensus, this implicit covenant, though unwritten, performed constitutionally significant power-restraining functions. Yang Gengguang, Essays on Medieval Chinese Political History, 1995, p. 89. 第四节，司马道子主政与皇权回朝，隐性契约的破裂与秩序崩溃。Section 4, The Rule of Sima Daozi and the Resurgence of Imperial Power. The breakdown of the implicit covenant and collapse of order. In the late Eastern Jin, Sima Daozi and his son, Sima Yuanxian, seized control deliberately, breaking long-standing conventions. They strengthened imperial power, excluded aristocratic clans, monopolized authority, intervened in regional military governments, and destroyed the upper-lower balance, attempting to restore Qinhan-style monarchical centralization. This directly crossed the boundaries of the implicit covenant, triggering intense resentment among aristocratic clans, escalating military conflict between upper and lower reaches, a complete rupture between center and regions, the outbreak of the Sun En Lu Sun rebellion, Huan, Xuan's usurpation, and the rise of Liu Yu. The Eastern Jin political order collapsed comprehensively. Tian Yuqing's judgment is precise. The Eastern Jin balance depended on implicit covenant and power equilibrium. Once the emperor voluntarily breached convention and broke the compact, with no rigid institutions or written covenants to safeguard order, the entire system collapsed instantly and irreversibly. This case profoundly demonstrates that a power-restraining order sustained only by understandings, customs, and force, while possessing constitutional functions, is extremely fragile, far less stable, durable, and enforceable than a rigid written compact like the Magna Carta. 第7章，南北朝双中心政治，严根望论，晋阳与邺城的权力分立。Chapter 2, Dual Center Politics in the Northern and Southern Dynasties. Yang Gengguang on the separation of powers between Jinyang and Ye. During the Northern and Southern Dynasties, the Northern Dynasties gradually formed a stable dual center structure, a core feature of the Wei-Jin Northern-Southern political framework. In Essays on Medieval Chinese Political History, Yang Gengguang systematically demonstrates that from the division of the Northern Wei onward, the Northern Dynasties long maintained a dual center structure. The military hegemony in Jinyang and the administrative court in Ye coexisted. Jinyang held military power, Ye held civil administration. Military and civil authority were geographically separated and mutually checked, forming a power order that operated for a long time without written compact. Yang Gengguang, Essays on Medieval Chinese Political History, 1995, p. 127. Tang Changru further notes that the dual center structure emerged from the fusion of northern tribal military tradition and central plains administrative tradition, separating military and civil power to prevent any single force from dominating Tang Changru. 魏晋南北朝史论丛 1955年 第189页。Tian Yuqing adds that dual-center checks relied entirely on strength and custom, without institutional or contractual protection, and thus stability was far lower than in written constitutional orders. 田余庆 Explorations in Qinghang Weijing, History 1993 p. 134. Although the southern dynasties lacked an explicit dual center form, they also exhibited balance between center and regions. Emperor and military commanders, still belonging to a power equilibrium based purely on custom without compact.